In the waning summer of 1879, the Missouri borderlands shimmered under a heavy heat. The Cobb family, Elias, his wife Mary, and their two children, Samuel and little Ruth, worked their land from dawn till dusk. The farm sat on the edge of a dense, whispering forest, where the wind often carried voices that didn't belong to the living. Neighbors spoke of the land's strange past, a battlefield once soaked in blood, now fertile beyond reason. But Elias Cobb, a man of reason and toil, brushed it off. "Ain't no curse, just good soil," he'd say. His hands blistered from the plow. Yet that summer, the corn grew too tall, too fast, and when the crows stopped coming, Mary began to worry. One evening, a gaunt stranger arrived, asking for water and a night's rest. His name was Silas Reddick, a drifter with sunken eyes and a voice like smoke. He offered to help with the harvest in exchange for food. Elias accepted, though Mary felt uneasy. That night, as the lantern flickered low, Silas whispered strange blessings over the cornfields, muttering words that twisted the air. "The earth remembers," he said, "and it always collects its debt." By dawn, he was gone, leaving behind only a patch of withered stalks shaped like a man's outline. Days passed, and oddities grew. The well water turned metallic. The cows refused to graze near the north fence. Samuel swore he heard laughter from the corn rows. Elias dismissed it all until he saw the corn bleeding red sap. Mary wanted to call the preacher. Elias said they'd just work harder. But that night, Ruth wandered into the field and came back clutching a small wooden charm, carved like a skull with a corn husk crown. "The man in the field gave it to me," she said. Elias's heart stopped cold. The next evening, a windstorm swept across the land. The Cobbs tried to save their crops, lanterns swaying in the dark. But the corn whispered like a crowd. Through the rustling came a voice. "You took what was mine." Samuel saw figures moving between the rows, shadowed, broken shapes. They looked like soldiers. The Civil War had ended 14 years ago, but these men carried bayonets of bone and faces of soil. When the wind calmed, half the field had rotted black. Reverend McAllister arrived after hearing rumors. He prayed in the house, sprinkling water over the door frames. "The Lord's work turned sour when built on stolen ground," he said. Elias protested. "We bought this land fair and honest." The Reverend shook his head. "But the blood beneath it was never buried right." He told them the land once belonged to a freedman named Josiah Gray, who vanished during the war after being accused of witchcraft for making crops grow out of season. His bones, locals said, were never found. Mary began digging behind the barn where the corn grew tallest. There, she found a tangle of roots that pulsed faintly, as if alive. At their center lay a rusted locket engraved with the initials JG inside was a lock of child's hair. When she touched it, the roots shuddered and oozed that same red sap. The ground whispered her name. She dropped the locket and ran, but the soil where she dug began to smoke. That night, thunder rolled without rain. Fire streaked across the horizon, but no lightning followed. The Cobb children woke screaming. Their windows were full of faces watching from the corn. Elias loaded his rifle and shot into the fields. The next morning, he found no bodies, only stalks torn open, their insides full of black ash. On one, carved deep into the stem, were the words, "Give back the harvest." Old Man Whitlock rode over from 2 farms away. He told Elias that long ago, Silas Reddick, the same drifter, had been Josiah Gray's hand before the war. Folks said he betrayed Josiah to bounty hunters, then vanished with the man's land deeds. "If Reddick's come back," Whitlock said, "he ain't looking for food. He's looking to finish something." Elias remembered the drifter's words. The earth remembers. The truth began to crack his stubborn pride. The children fell ill. Ruth's skin turned pale and fevered. Samuel coughed up flecks of mud. The doctor from Fayette couldn't explain it. "It's like the soil's in their lungs," he muttered. Mary prayed every night, her faith worn thin. Elias sat on the porch, listening to the wind drag through the corn. Sometimes he thought he saw Josiah's shape walking between the rows, a tall, patient silhouette, watching his family with pity instead of anger. Desperate, Elias decided to burn the field. Mary begged him not to, fearing it would worsen the curse. But Elias said, "If the harvest's cursed, then let the fire take it." At dawn, he poured lamp oil across the rows and struck a match. The flames roared high, but the fire burned cold, blue, and silent. The smoke took on faces, men, women, children, all whispering, "You owe the earth." When it was done, the field stood untouched. Not a stalk had burned. Ruth awoke one night crying. She said she'd seen a man in a wide hat standing by her bed. "He said his name was Josiah," she whispered. "He said he never meant harm, just wanted his family's promise kept." Mary realized then, Josiah wasn't cursing them. He was warning them. Something else, something older than Josiah, was feeding from the land. Following Ruth's dream, Elias searched the old root cellar that came with the property. Beneath the floorboards, he found a sealed box wrapped in oilcloth. Inside were old papers, deeds signed not by Josiah Gray, but by Silas Reddick himself. Among them lay a confession. Reddick had murdered Josiah and buried him beneath the cornfield, selling the land cheap to unsuspecting families. "The ground shall bear witness," it read in trembling ink. Elias finally understood. His prosperity had grown from a grave. At dusk, a figure limped up the road, the same drifter from weeks ago. His eyes burned red, his hands black with soil. "You dug too deep, Cobb," he rasped. "Now he knows." Elias demanded to know who he was. Silas grinned, revealing teeth like cracked stone. "The land itself. Josiah fed it with his blood. I fed it with mine. Now it's hungry again." Before Elias could fire his rifle, Silas collapsed, his body crumbling into dust. That night, the farm trembled. The earth split open behind the barn, and from it rose roots thick as arms, pulsing with red light. The corn swayed though there was no wind. The voices of the dead echoed from below, pleading, crying, calling Elias's name. Mary grabbed the children and ran for the house, but Elias stood frozen, staring at the field. From the cracks, a shape emerged, a man formed of roots and soil holding the locket Mary had found. "Return what was stolen," the figure said, "and the earth shall rest." Elias knelt, tears cutting through the dirt on his face. "I didn't know," he whispered. "We didn't know." The spirit of Josiah Gray looked at him with hollow eyes. "Ignorance doesn't wash blood from the land. Only truth does," Elias swore to set it right. He would find Josiah's descendants, return the land, and tell the world the truth. Josiah nodded once, and the ground began to still. But before disappearing, the spirit warned, "The harvest still owes one soul." Elias understood what Josiah meant. Someone had to stay. Someone had to make the land whole. He told Mary to take the children and leave for her sisters in Springfield. "The land won't rest till it's paid," he said. Mary cried, begging him to run with them. But Elias only kissed her forehead. "This farm gave us everything," he said softly. "Now I give it back." At dawn, he walked into the cornfield carrying the locket. He pressed it into the earth and whispered a prayer. Mary watched from the road as Elias disappeared into the rows. The corn swayed violently, then fell still. Moments later, sunlight broke through the clouds for the first time in weeks. By nightfall, the fields turned golden, not cursed black, but a gentle amber glow. The air smelled clean again, but Elias never returned. Only his hat lay near the well, dusted with red soil. Mary sold the farm and moved to Springfield, raising Samuel and Ruth with stories of their father's bravery. Each autumn she sent a portion of her savings to a church in the name of Josiah Gray. The land, locals said, grew richer than ever, now under new hands. But those who worked it claimed that sometimes, when the sun set, they saw a man standing at the edge of the field watching quietly, as if making sure the harvest stayed honest. In 1902, long after Mary's passing, Ruth, now grown, received a letter postmarked from the Borderlands. Inside was a faded note in Elias's handwriting: "The earth takes what we forget to give. Tell our children to walk gently upon it." It was dated the morning he vanished. Alongside it was a dried ear of corn, golden, unrotted, still fragrant after 23 years. Generations later, locals still tell of the Cobb family farm and its cursed harvest. Some call it a ghost story. Others say it's a parable about greed, guilt, and the price of ignorance. But those who listen closely understand. The land remembers kindness as much as cruelty. It grows what we plant, whether seeds or sins. And on quiet autumn nights, when the wind rustles through Missouri corn, you can almost hear Elias Cobb's voice reminding the living, respect the soil, honor the past. Every harvest begins with what's buried beneath.